Shalom, everybody. We are going to be learning Rabbi Avraham Mordechai Gottlieb's essay today by the name of Loving the Other as Yourself. It is the first essay of many essays translated into English in the back of Giving, which we've been learning for some time. Also translated by Arya Siegel. Let's begin. In order to comprehend the nature of the command to love the other, consider the statement of one of the greats of Israel, Rabbi Yitzchak Kalish of Vorki, known as the Vorka Rebbe. He said, quote, "Until I reach the point that I love the worst sinner of our nation, just as I love my own son, I have yet to fulfill the mitzvah of and love your fellow as yourself. To fulfill this mitzvah, I must not feel any preference for my son over any other. The love to which he aspired is something beyond what is natural. Love of offspring is natural and exists throughout the animal kingdom. So our humanity certainly isn't defined by our loving our children. However, we are worthy of being human when we love another person as we love our own child, with the same dearness and the same automatic empathy and inclination to justify the child's actions." I humorously heard the Rebbe Shlita, who is Rabbi Avraham Mordechai Gottlieb, recently speak about this notion about our natural love for children, and even so grandchildren. He says, for example, he's got grandkids in the house running around, running amok, really destroying the place. But if someone else's kid came and destroyed the place, he would come and, relatively speaking, destroy the kid. Meaning to say, he said explicitly, I don't have patience for other kids. We don't have patience for other kids, but we have infinite patience, seemingly, at least we attempt to, for our own children and our grandchildren and the like, because it's mine. And something outside that's seemingly not mine, why should I have patience for that? How could I have patience for that? So of course this is above nature, but the fact that we're saying here a human being is that which loves another person as we love our own child, meaning the deepest definition of an Adam, of a person, as humanity is called B'nai Adam, the sons of Adam, as we say Adam Harishon, the first man. From the Kabbalist tradition, we tend to say that the first man was the first created being that had the capacity to reach to the highest states of consciousness and was given that capacity and then went through the motions as we learn about in Kabbalah. And we are not denying that there are and were civilizations and humanoids prior to Adam. But that does not mean that he was not distinct and separate and unique from the whole. Certainly he was an incomprehensible spiritual being. So much so that his soul is what all of humanity is today. We're all parts of that one soul. Which is why if I can be like Adam, as the Bala Sulam says, Adam, a human, is from the language as quoted from Yeshayahu, the prophet, Yeshayahu Navi. Adam Elyon, similar to the Most High. As we say, of humanity are Tzelem Elokim. We're made in the image of the Creator. So too, Adam, being humanity, was given the capacity to elevate above their egoistic nature and reach an altruistic nature and be similar to the Most High, be similar to the Creator. So much so, the same way the Creator does not have any preference and whose love is infinite, absolute, and beyond all. So too, if we can be similar to that, then we would have no preference between our kids and someone else's kids, as the example here portrays. To continue, it's impossible to reach the level of loving the other without the preparatory work of building a spiritual infrastructure by way of observing the mitzvot of the Torah. Only by means of this spiritual growth can we come to comprehend the mitzvah of and love your fellow as yourself, and arrive at an inner state where we are prepared to fulfill it. Spiritual growth is defined as our ability to give, and is also defined by our awareness of how we truly are, being how truly egoistic we are. In contrast to that, the world tends to value, at least in the media, the powers and strength of self-service, self-development, and it's all under the umbrella of egoism. And there's no notion of self-development to the point of being selfless and giving completely to the other. Here and there, a little bit, there are sparks of hope, certainly. But for the most part, that's the status quo, is to put the ego on a pedestal. The significance of this is that we are not free to switch or change any mitzvah, whether of rabbinic origin or directly from the Torah. The network of the mitzvot as a whole is intended to alter our character. And this entire system is a divine document whose human alteration would distort its divine intent. It must be fulfilled in all its forms and levels in order that we may rise above the prison of our creaturely desire to receive, and in the end arrive at the lofty state of freedom defined by loving the other. We are now on page 138 of Giving. Of course, in more of a biblical language, being that the Torah describes so often the dynamic of the nation of Israel leaving Egypt. Yetziat Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim, Egypt, is from the language of tsar. Tsar is constriction, restriction. It is the imprisonment of the ego, in essence. So to receive the miracle that is by the Creator's hand, because only He has the keys to open up channels of higher nature within our being and consciousness, can He bring us to a more developed, higher state of being, which is leaving Mitzrayim, leaving the prison of our egoism, and raising us to an elevated state of giving altruistically. A parable for this: when a contractor builds a building, he must combine many components of a great variety that make up differing sections: foundation, walls, piping, etc., all correctly assembled to create a solid, functioning building. For each element, there is a certain professionally accepted standard that must be adhered to. If the contractor should begin to set his own standards that inevitably will be in his own interest, woe to whoever ends up living in that building. In general, Bala Sulam's point is that all of the Torah, all of its mitzvot, its interpretations, its stories, and its anecdotes exist for the single purpose of transforming our nature from a nature of self-love to a nature of loving the other. All the subject matter of the Torah comes to explain this idea on the mental plane and to prepare us for a paradigm shift in thought. But the matter must conclude with a revolution in the practical sphere of our actions. Of course, alluding to here to the dynamic of going from lo lishma to lishma, from doing the Torah and mitzvot by means of our egoism, for not the right intention, meaning I want reward in this world and the next by means of my service of God, as opposed to serving just to serve, as opposed to just having the service itself be the reward. Because how amazing is the opportunity to serve the King of all Kings. How many people would pay big money to help and serve their favorite celebrity, athlete, CEO, guru, and the like? How much more so the King of all kings, the crown of all crowns, the Creator himself? So slowly but surely, just because one does not have the right intention, does not mean that they should not do the action. They should. They should surely do the action and then reflect on it after the fact. In the midst of the reflection, a soul accounting, so to speak, cheshbon nefesh, as we say in Hebrew, and they see the truth of the matter because they want to see the truth. And by assistance above, they receive the means to see the truth within, being their egoism, and how truly self-serving they were in the moment of doing the good deed or learning the Torah and the like. That awareness itself elevates the matter after the fact. That's one thing. And second of all, one should find great joy in the truth. It's the truth that we are under the umbrella of egoism, and we're slowly but surely working our way up to the truth of authenticity, the true service of giving in order to give, not giving in order to receive, as we teach our children. But some people stay as children their whole lives. It is unfortunate, but we're all like blades of grass in a field, the field being the unified soul, so to speak, and some pieces of grass wither, and some sprout and grow and become strong and worthy to keep on growing and growing. Of course, by way of this metaphor, the piece of grass that withers is reabsorbed into the soil, and its essence is still in the field because that soul is still existent. When it leaves the body, it goes into the world of truth, and it can be plugged back into the matrix, so to speak, as Judaism does abide by the notion of Gilgulin, reincarnation. We do go through processes until we come to the correction of our soul. The fact that we're here learning this right here, right now, is a huge implication to the ability that we have in this lifetime to not only finish the job, but maybe even reach a point where we can help others do theirs. But first and foremost, we must focus on our own correction in order to be more giving and loving by means of the Torah and the mitzvot. Because those are the mechanisms that provide us the tools to combat and rise above our egoism by way of the help of the Creator. Many dynamics, many details within details to speak about the dynamics of our avodat Hashem, our inner work. And we're really just covering the tip of the iceberg here. But let's continue. This is true both on the individual level and the communal level. What is? Again, the last sentence read, all the subject matter of the Torah comes to explain this idea on the mental plane and to prepare us for a paradigm shift in thought. But the matter must conclude with a revolution in the practical sphere of our actions. This is true both on the individual level and the communal level. And love your fellow as yourself, v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, should constitute the foundation of society. Each individual should see himself or herself as a form of community property, so that wherever his or her help is needed, that is precisely where he or she is prepared to devote time and energy. But how can we make ourselves a machine that works for the community's benefit? When we each have our own minimal needs. Bal HaSulam answers, if the whole society without exception elects to adopt the path of loving the other, then each person needs not be concerned with fulfilling his or her own needs, since everyone else will be watching out for him or her. Of course, this is the utopian ideal, but the principle being brought here is that if I'm in a community of 100 people, and there's 99 people thinking about me and taking care of my needs, both materially and spiritually, then I have the means I have the setting and the mechanism to regulate my consciousness to constantly be thinking about the other, because I don't have to worry about myself. In the meantime, given the way the society is built today, I have no choice but to focus and think about myself and the needs of myself and my family and the like. Of course, here, principle is that if everything was taken care of, I could actually focus on the other. Truly. Not to say it's not possible here and now. It is. It's just harder. This is the ideal society. The Baal Shalom has much literature on this perfected society. And of course, this society is akin to communist, socialist ideals. And in truth, that is the ideal by means of the Torah and the mitzvot. If we're speaking about the ultimate spiritual society, where we all have a concentrated effort to annul our ego and reach dvekut, adhesion with the Creator, meaning the highest level of spirituality, loving the other as yourself, what is money? What is materiality? If we all were in a society, as small as it was, and worked our way to make it bigger and bigger, to reach this most exalted goal of adhesion, nothing else is important. That's the thing. That's the goal. Sat Hashem, speeding our days. To continue, the problem with this answer is that we are far from having a society with such preparedness to devote ourselves to the other. So what can a person do today who wants to fulfill the mitzvah of loving the other? You should form a group of a few close friends with whom you want to practice loving the other, but not with people who in their hearts are just watching out for themselves. The purpose of forming a group is to be strengthened in one's spiritual work. By connecting to people who are selfish, you may bring about the opposite effect. Therefore, it's preferable to create a group in which everyone explicitly wants to progress in the direction of annulling the ego. Meaning, who isn't egoistic? Surely that's the case, but the fact that someone has the tools and knows that the ultimate goal is to reach for the dvekut, adhesion, loving the other as yourself, then at least they're on the train. They're going to the target. They've got the tools. What the selfishness here is implying is someone who doesn't have the tools, someone who's not connected to any of these spiritual frameworks and systems and is truly just going through the motions for themselves alone. And it could be that without being exposed to such concepts in our inner work, that one could be on the outside, seemingly very pious religious Jew who prays 3 times a day and keeps the holy Sabbath and eats kosher and learns Torah and gives charity and does the good deeds. But if they don't have the concentrated effort and goal to rise above their egoistic nature, if they're even aware of their egoistic nature, perhaps they think of themselves as already being righteous, and to rise to this more exalted state of giving, then even those individuals are technically under this umbrella. They can be labeled as the selfish ones. So of course, best to connect to those who are connected to this type of learning, if the goal is to come to that most exalted state. Logical. And if God should bring your way the opportunity to assist someone outside of the group, you should do this only if one of 2 conditions is fulfilled. Either the assistance required will not create any personal connection with the other person, or you must be capable of relating to this person without his or her being aware of it. In this way, the connection will be only one way, and you won't be influenced by any bad elements in the other. Meaning to say, we are constantly opening up different channels of connection. We're meshing consciousness one with the other. Whenever we speak to another person, we go through these dynamics. There are ways to guard one's consciousness and stay aware of the greatness in the other and think about the creator and not be as negatively influenced or negatively influenced at all. But there is a way to absorb the being of the other individual who is less refined and, let's say, more selfish in this case, and one can damage oneself by connecting to this individual. Hence the advice here of, if the assistance is required, to do it in such a fashion where it's a one-way street and there is not a connection that opens up the channel to mesh the consciousness and mesh the energies that could equate to a person's corruption by means of the corrupted individual. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov does say that if we focus on the good of the other, as wicked as they may be, then we cannot be harmed. That is a strong and difficult task in itself. That's why we have the advice here, to be careful. In Hebrew, to be careful is zhirus, zrizus. It's to be careful with the particulars, whether it's a seemingly small mitzvah or a large mitzvah, because truly we don't know the reward or the levels of refinement we absorb and receive, whether small or large. But I heard from the Rebbe Shita recently that zehirus is from the language, has the same root as Zohar. Zohar is splendor, it's light, it's illumination. Because when we are careful to guard ourselves in these ways, with intention to guard ourselves for the sake of not falling away in connection with the Creator, then we receive a light. We are illuminated. Meaning there's light in all things because there's so many things to be mindful of and conscientious of and to be careful about. But again, Rabbi Nachman says, if one focuses on the good of the other and finds the holy kernel within them, sees whatever negative attributes that are apparent and connect to the holy spark within it. If it's anger, know that they can use that anger for holiness. They can be angry at the egoism of themselves and the world at large. If it's a stubbornness, that can manifest in a holy way, being stubbornness, to not move an inch from serving the Creator with all of one's heart and soul. If it's a laziness, to know that that is just an expression of the person wanting to be similar to the Creator, because it's said that the Creator is absolute and perfect, and the upper light is still and simple, and is, technically speaking, not moving. We are the vessel that's constantly changing and having different experiences in the midst of our growth, but the light is one and simple. So too we want to be one and simple. And wanting to sit on the couch and relax all day is an expression of that. We are the branch of the root being the Creator, creation being the branch, and every branch wants to be similar to its root. Regardless of what the character trait is, to see the holy kernel within it, and that too protects one from not being negatively influenced from the other, and can anchor an individual. Not only that, but judging them favorably, and knowing that they are where they are in life, tomorrow can hold a totally different day, and things can turn 180 completely. And there's a most holy soul within every individual, no matter how wicked they may seem. By way of that carefulness and mindfulness, that is rizus. That could be a zohar, that could be a illumination, so to speak, for that individual. By way of the cosmic butterfly effect in our interconnectedness, judging the other favorably, even in their wickedness, could turn the tides for them and provide them more opportunity an ability to come back to the correct path. To continue a little bit before we call it a day, another question. If our spiritual work is primarily within the confines of a small group of special souls, how can this bring about the healing that is necessary for society? Bala Sulam answers that our efforts must always be directed to our inner selves. In each individual, there is a holy center whose essence is expressed in loving the other and faith in the Creator. And this is his or her inner core. In general, each of us must give significance to our inner core in preference over the outer shell, the klipot. In this way, the inner is increased and strengthened. This is a lifelong task, and to the extent that someone succeeds in this, he or she radiates to the whole world a strengthening of the inner. Thus, society is gradually healed, and the small circle of special souls is gradually widened to include other people who are willing to devote themselves to loving the other. In the course of time, this group can eventually include everyone. Slowly but surely, it spreads and spreads and spreads. But first and foremost, it has to start with one's own inner work, and hope that inner work is in tandem with the work of the spiritual group, even if it's 3-4 friends, for example. And that work should be expressed ideally in thought, speech, and action. We should think greatly of the friends, to really exaggerate in our minds the absolute, incomprehensible infinitude of their souls, and to imagine each and every one of them as having the potential to be the greatest of the generation. What's the downfall? That's only positive energy that we're bringing into our own consciousness and in our connection with the other. And speech, to speak to the other as if they're a very important person, because they are. And action, to actively give to the other person as well. That giving, of course, being by means of materiality. That can be in the form of money, time, or energy. Anything that really takes out of oneself and gives to the other. These are practical ways that we can give to the other in the midst of our spiritual group. And again, slowly but surely spread it out so it can be bigger and bigger with Hashem's help. Till next time, all the best.